Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. I'm Joe. This video will be a gameplay example of the game France 40. This is from GMT Games and designer Mark Simonitch. This is the second edition of the game, and it is really two games in one. We have Sickle Cut, and then we also have Dynamo, and we'll be taking a look at Sickle Cut. So this is May 13th, 1940 is when it begins. This is the German invasion of France and Belgium, the Netherlands, etc. France and the Low Countries, I guess, would be the best way to put it. And so we're going to start here in a situation that everything is already set up. You're only seeing probably, I don't know, 60% of the board, maybe slightly more than that, 2/3 or so. And that's only because I wanted to have a shot that shows the main area of action, at least at start, which is this area here, and then a little bit further south. This here is the Ardennes Forest, and we have Guderian's forces are concentrated just below where the camera shot is right now. You'll see that here in a bit. So Mark Simonitch and GMT were good enough to actually provide here in the playbook. You can see Sickle Cut, Guderian's drive to the coast. The other side of this map, this is the mounted map. The other side of it is Dynamo retreat to victory, basically Dunkirk. There's the road up to Dunkirk. But you have an extended example of play on pages 2 and 3. I'm going to run through that for you here as I did with the Africa game. And then once that is done, we will probably continue on, because I think it only covers the Germans' first turn, so we'll do the Allies' first turn as well, at least, probably, and then we'll see where we go from there. But at least that would give you an opportunity to see the game being played. As I mentioned, this is the mounted map. Now, I did do a first look video on this game, so if you didn't check that out, you may want to, because it goes over the components and so on and so forth. And you can see both sides of this map, since we're only going to be playing Dynamo. One of the cool things here, someone asked about this, because I mentioned the combined game where you play this and then the next one, and they asked if that was really true. It is really true. You can see it right here on the playbook. France 40 combined game on page 13. So you have, right here is page 13, you have the France 40 combined game. So that's just a question that came up when I first did the first look video. So I thought I would bring that up right here and mention it. So we're going to get started with the Sickle Cut extended example of play. The game will start with the German player's movement phase. All his units may move their full movement allowance. The Panzer divisions are color-coded to indicate the Panzer Corps they are attached to, but there are no restrictions on their movement. So you can see some German Panzers up here with the yellow stripe on them. And then we have some Panzers here with red stripes on them. And this one right here has got Rommel's name on it, so that would be where then General Rommel was located. Okay, so we are going to start up here. So this is a Zoc Bond game, if you're familiar with any of the Simonitch 40 series game or 4X series games. They feature Zoc Bonds. Here we have a Zoc Bond. It's this hex right here, because we have a French unit here and a French unit here. So that's a Zoc Bond. Now, if this German unit was a French unit, or this stack was a French unit, you'd have a hex side bond right here. So this is a hex bond, and this is a hex side bond because it crosses a hex side between two units if this were a French stack or a French unit. That's not the case, obviously. The point being that even though this hex is in the zone of control of this unit, this is not a Zoc Bond hex. This would be. So the reason I'm even bringing this up is movement. We're going to move this stack to this hex. Now, the way the counters work is the first number on the left, the 7 there, is the attack factor. The middle one is the defense factor, and the one on the right is the movement factor. The 2 in the black box is their stacking. Their number for stacking. You can have up to 7 points unless they're in the same division. So you can see we've got an armored division, a regiment of mechanized or motorized infantry. We have 2 of them, actually. So we're going to move them up right now on our terrain effects chart. It's clear terrain, so movement point for mech is 1. As you can see right here, clear, it's 1. It's got no effect on combat and no notes next to it. So we're just going to move this whole stack because it's only going to cost them, it's not going to cost them 7 movement points, let's put it that way. They are moving from an enemy zone of control to another enemy zone of control, but in this case, that's not going to impact the fact that you can move and attack as long as you don't exceed your movement allowance, and so they did not do that. So we now have these 2 stacks are going to attack this single French armored unit. So we add up the the attack factors here. We have a 7, a 2, and a 2. That's 11. And then we have an 8, a 2, and a 2. That's 12. So that is, in the extended example, it says 24 to 8. So that would be a 3 to 1. And so that's the column you would be rolling on. The Germans also get a troop quality bonus because the red is the troop quality. So they have elite combined arms, which gives them a 1 column shift to the right, making it a 4 to 1. So you look here, 4 to 1, right? The die roll, according to the extended example, is a 2, which is DR2, Advance 2. So what happens now is the Allies have the option to do a determined defense. They're going to bypass that option, so they have to retreat 2 hexes, so they'll just retreat 1, 2, and they get disrupted, so we put a disrupted marker on them. Now the Germans can advance 2, which they will also do, so they will advance 2, and then this one is going to advance to here. Now again, you can see there's a Zoc bond between these 2, although this one is disrupted. Okay, so that completes this combat in this area. Now we'll move further down the map and look at some stuff that's taking place a little bit further south. Now, if I didn't mention this at the top, all of this stuff takes place after the German movement. These guys here are reserves, or reinforcements rather, that came on in the movement phase, which preceded the combat. What we're looking at right now is combat. So now we're going to have another combat. So the Germans are going to try to cross the river. This is the Meuse here, the Meuse. Here we have, again, you have a river here that they're going to be attacking across, which is going to halve their power. So they do have 8, 10, 12, and then again over here we have 7, 10, and 12. So 12 and 12 is 24. Now because we're attacking across the river, the defender up here has his defense rating doubled, so that's 12 to 14, which is going to be 1 to 2. But we're going to get 1 column shift for the elite status of the German units, which would make it 1 to 1, and then we're going to add 1 of our air units. I can pick it up, which gives them a 2nd shift and makes it 2 to 1. Now we zoom out for a split second here. The French have a headquarters right here. They're going to use that, the headquarters ability, to shift this 1 column again, so make it 1 to 1, right? So then you would flip it over as it has been used. Now let's assume the Germans rolled a 1. So if the Germans rolled a 1, here on the result chart, that would be an A1. So the attackers would lose 1. But their commander here is Rommel. So they can use Rommel's ability for a reroll. And the reroll is a 4. And if we look here on our chart in the 1 to 1 column here, 4 is A1 DR2. Now this time, the Allies are going to elect to put up a determined defense. So the terrain in this hex is clear. So they have to use the clear column of the determined defense table, which is right here. They roll a 7, which is a fail. And therefore, you roll 2d6, of course, here. I didn't mention that. They roll a 7, which is a fail. They are disrupted and must retreat 2 hexes, and then the Germans may advance. So let's remove this, and this goes to the used pile. And then he would retreat 1, 2, and become disrupted. Whoops, let's face this the right way. And now the Germans can advance, and when you advance, you can split your units up. They don't all have to go into a specific hex, nor do they have to go to the defender's vacated hex. Now, attackers that cross a river have to stop. So we're going to take this unit and this bottom unit, and they're going to cross here and stop there. Our 3 unit will move up here. And then on here, we'll take this guy and one of these two and move them here. And the other one will go here. Like so. I forgot to mention, but the Germans did take a step loss. So this guy right here was a 2-7. He's now a 1-1-7. That's the one who's in the forest, still on the right or eastern bank of the river. I just wanted to make that clear before we moved on to the next combat, which is going to take place right here. So here we have, again, a river that they'll be attacking across. It is 6, 2, 2, which is 10. They have a 4, so that would be 10 to 8 because they get doubled. And these guys get halved. That's the other piece of it. So that 10 becomes a 5, so it is 5 to 8, which is a 1 to 2. So again, the Germans have an elite shift, and they will apply an air attack to make it a 2 to 1, and then they will roll and get a 4. Now, once again, the Allied player is going to elect to do the determined defense, but this time the defender is in the woods. So you have a woods column, which is under other. Others, woods, marsh, woods, marsh, polder, and clear with a town go under the other column. Okay, so they will again roll 2d6 dice, and this time they roll a 10, which is a 1-1 hold. So that means that they actually held their ground, and they suffer. These guys are used and go back. This guy gets flipped because they took a step loss, but they do hold. And the Germans will, of course, elect to give that step loss to one of the infantry units to maintain their panzers, but they cannot advance. So this, by the way, is a fortress unit. If you're wondering what unit type that is a fortress unit. So they both took a step loss, and the French held there, and the Germans failed to cross the river. So shifting a little further south now, we're going to have our next batch of combat here. Now, these guys and these guys are going to team up, and they're going to attack the 53rd Division, which is right here. Now, we're again going across a river, so they'll get doubled to 12. Their total power will get downgraded from 28 to 14. So it's 14-12, but they're going to apply a aircraft here, one of their 3 remaining, to give it a shift, and then they also get the elite shift again. So that's a 2-column shift, which makes it 4 to 1. And a die roll of 4 is attacker 1, defender 1. So both sides will lose a step, and the defender must either retreat 2 hexes or do a determined defense. The Allied player decides not to do he decides to do a determined defense, and rolls a 5, which is reduced to a 4 for the -1 DRM because his lead unit, you see the white box, that is a low troop quality indicator there. So he gets a -1 DRM, so that 5 becomes a 4. So the result is the unit loses another step and is eliminated. So this unit gets eliminated. This guy goes back to the used box. The German player will take a step loss and may advance after combat, but must stop after crossing the river. So both of them will go like so. So he will go here, and these guys will jump the river and go there. Okay, now for our next combat, we're going to have the 10th Panzer Division, which is right here. And they're going to attack the 55th Division, which is right there. They will actually, let's look at their attacks. So they have an 8, a 3, and a 2. Okay, so they get a total of 13, which is going to get halved. And the French unit will be doubled to a 12. And then we're going to do 2 shifts for troop quality for the elite combined arms, which is that, and they are low quality, so that's another shift. So that's 2 columns for that. Then the Allied player will use his headquarters for the second army, which is down here. It's right here. And Vuziers. So I'm going to mark him used, and that gives them a column shift to the left, but the Germans are going to use 2 air power and give themselves a final 3 to 1. So they get a die roll of 6, which equals D1. So the Allied unit loses a step and must retreat 3 hexes or conduct a determined defense. They're going to elect simply to retreat. So these guys will go to the used pile, and that's all the German air power. This guy's going to get reduced by a step and have to retreat 3 hexes. So he will go 1, 2, 3, stop here. He is disrupted. And then the Germans can, of course, cross the river. And so they will. So they're going to go... this guy, well, the 337 will go here, and the other 2 will go here. So they now have crossed the river, and they are, again, into better territory, better terrain, rather, for future operations. So that completes the Germans' turn in terms of combat. So you would go to the recovery phase, but there are no disrupted German units, so you would skip the recovery phase. Then you would go to the supply phase, and all the German units right now can trace are within 5 hexes of a road, so they are all in supply. And the last phase is the GQG phase. So GQG stands for Grand Quartier General. My bad French again. These are basically placed in an attempt to reflect the sluggish nature of the French reaction and their puzzling lack of counterattacks. So it's basically a way to hinder a skilled player actually defending in a more aggressive or thoughtful manner. So what you do is the Germans are able to put them down, and then there's a die roll where there's 2 die rolls to remove some of them. There are 6 in total, so the Germans will place all 6 and then roll 2 dice, and those 2 numbers, or 1 number if it's the same, would actually be removed. And the effect of that will slow down the they'll have a slow reaction. So these are the GQG markers right here. Put them down here by Sedan. So you can see you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the German picks out some units. I won't move the map. I won't move the camera rather around. We've got some units in the north, 2 in the north, 1 and 2 would go to the north, 3 and 4 are around Charleroi, and then 5 is down in Reims, and 6 it would be actually right here. So that will actually end the German player turn. So I will place these, but that actually ends the German turn, as I mentioned, and now it would move over, and it would be the Allied turn. Okay, so preliminary to the Allied turn, I wanted to show kind of the turn track that's down here. So you also have this cup, which we use to pull out Allied reinforcements. The Allies get no reinforcements here in turn 1. You can hopefully see that's a 0. Then we have 3 on turn 2, 3 on turn 3, 3 on turn 4, and then 4, 4, 4, 4, and then 5 for the last 3 turns, which is optional, the last final turn. You can also see the GQG markers. Some of them come off. The Germans no longer can use 1 at turn 3. They cannot use 2 after turn 5, 3, 4, and then 5 would come off and in that last turn, as the Allies kind of recovered from the shock of that initial push, initial blitzkrieg, basically. So a couple of other things I wanted to mention. I probably am not going to go through the entire turn for time's sake, but since we didn't talk about movement, I wanted to kind of talk about movement at the very least. So the Allies have 3 trains or 3 rail movements that they can use, and these guys are coming on here in this first turn. So you can see here it says S. So the reinforcements come in by areas, and you can see the colored, like these green S's here. And then there's this kind of aqua W over here. That's west, obviously. South. There's some purple here. That's southeast. Then there's east, of course. And the Germans have A, B, C, and D on their side. We did see that some in the earlier portions of the video. But these guys come on, and they come on via rail. Now you can see here on the map, hopefully, and I'll zoom in here in a little bit. You can see the rail lines. And they get 15 movement points on the rail lines. So this is a quick way, because this is an infantry unit, which infantry moves slow, right? They tend to move slow unless they're mechanized or motorized, which is not the case here. That's just simple leg infantry. That's actually a colonial unit. You can tell by the black coloring of the NATO symbol there. This one over here is a regular French army unit, but it is also a regular, it's the 43rd Division. It is just simply an infantry unit. It does not have motorization. We have headquarters here. The headquarters would automatically, if we had used this headquarters and it was on its use side at the first start of their turn, we would also flip this to the Allied side. And so that's the French side. So it's their turn now. Then when we go to turn 2, it would go back to the German side, etc. You have a nice terrain key here as well that I mentioned in the first look, but we're kind of keeping it simple and talking about some of the things that you could not see in the other video where things were much more zoomed in. So speaking of zoomed in, we've got our units here. So let's move them just to show the effect here. So you do have rail lines. Okay, other terrain, whoops, I do that a lot because I'm not looking at the camera. Rail lines, OT, down here OT is other terrain in hex. So it's not like they get a free pass just because they're on the train. They still have to pay terrain costs, because the train, obviously, if it's going through rougher terrain, is going to have a harder time than if it's going through clear terrain. So moving through a city or a town, for example, so like here, we would have to pay, actually it's still a 1, but there are some areas where you'll have to pay more, like wooded, rough, marshes, etc. Most of the time, it's going to just be 1. So let's just say we're going to move our 43rd Division here, and let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then where would we want to bring them? Perhaps in this direction, just continuing up. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then you could bring them up a little further. 13, 14, 15. We'll put them by San Quentin. So let's fix that. 13, 14, 15. So this one stops here. We would remove the train marker. We could apply it again because he's on a rail line. You can apply it again the next turn. Now for this one, we'll just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now he went through the woods here, but the woods are still only 1 for an infantry, I guess. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we'll just go 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And I know he's off the shot as well, but not by a whole lot. So you can see them there on the edge. There is a third one that we could use right here if we wanted to use it. Now you also have what's called extended movement. So let me reframe this and we'll talk about how that works. Okay, so we have this guy right here in Cambrai. He is the 32nd Infantry Division. Okay, so extended movement, and we're gonna show an example with this infantry unit. Non-mechanized get 2 extra movement points. There's also tactical movement, which allows you to attack afterwards, but we won't get into that. Just know that there is a tactical movement mode which doesn't use movement points and allows a unit to move 1 or 2 hexes. So that's basically it. And then they have the ability to attack. Now, if they go into an enemy zone of control, they have to stop, and they cannot cross a zone of control hex side, like a Zoc bond hex side, or a Zoc bond itself. So these guys would get 2. Mechanized units get 4, and heavy tanks, and the French do have a heavy tank. And it's right here, actually. It's in the reinforcement. So this is a heavy tank. You could tell by the gold color or the yellow color around the attack factor. That's a heavy tank. It's under Charles de Gaulle. That tank is not eligible for extended movement, that unit. So any other mechanized unit would be eligible for extended movement, and they would get 4 extra movement points. Cavalry units get 3. So infantry, regular old leg grunt infantry gets 2. So if we stayed in clear or road, you could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's say, and move there. Our British guy here could go 1, 2, 3, 4 into a city. That still is only 1, and then he could move up 1 more here. Say he's going towards. He's off map. So let's just leave him there in Arras. And so on. So that's kind of how that works. This was a unit we moved by rail. What you can do is kind of tilt them so that you know that that unit has already moved. That way, like, you're not tempted to say, oh, I didn't move this one yet. You need kind of a mnemonic or something along those lines to be able to know that you've moved somebody. So I think that's going to wrap it up here. I know this was relatively short, but I felt like I wanted to show movement as well as, of course, combat. The game does come with plenty of charts. This would be your terrain effects chart. We did see the combat results chart. On the inside, you have an extended sequence of play. There are 2 of these player aids, of course. Rally table, isolation, disengagement, evacuation, etc., etc. This, of course, covers both games, both Sickle Cut and Dynamo. So the game system is basically identical in both. There are special rules for each, but at some point I will probably play Dynamo as well. And I'm not saying I'm not going to do more with this game, but right now I'm still trying to work my way through my backlog, so to speak. So I may not do another video on this particular game for a little bit. I would love to do a series on the 4X games. I have all of them except Ukraine 43 and Ardennes 44. So I have all the other ones, and I would love to do something with that, but we'll see if I have time to do so sometime down the road. For now, that's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful at the very least. If you would, consider liking, sharing, and or subscribing. If you're not a subscriber, that would be awesome. I do appreciate it. But I also thank you just for even watching the video. And you can also post any comments or questions you may have after watching as well, of course, and I will do my best to answer any questions or respond to your comments. But yeah, that will do it for this one. My name's Joe. This is the Hexed Encounter channel, and until next time, as always, happy gaming.